Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanande. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusuti Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we are on chapter 9 of Transcendental Diaries by His Grace Hari Sori Prabhu, and we are in Sridham Mayapur. It is March the 4th, 1976. Dayananda Prabhu left at daybreak, bound for Dallas. He was armed with 2 letters from Srila Prabhupada, one addressed to the parents of the students, asking them to return their children to the school, with an additional request that they be prompt in paying tuition fees, and one to the devotees involved with the running of the school, asking them to cooperate with Dayananda to keep it open. So just to reflect back on what we read last week, the school in Dallas was about to close, and when Srila Prabhupada discovered this, he became very disturbed and he became very strained in thinking that the school was going to close, and immediately he took action and did what was necessary to make sure that the school remained open. So now we're just hearing a little bit more about that, how Srila Prabhupada was greatly concerned about the school, and he's making sure that it's staying open. And now on a new section, instead of walking on the roof, Prabhupada went for a 20-minute ride in his new maroon Mercedes sedan. Gangamuni's van rode in front, playing kirtan over the loudspeakers. As we drove through the surrounding villages, the inhabitants stood wide-eyed, looking at the procession. The car is classy and comfortable, and Prabhupada is very pleased to have it, because previously devotees have had to beg various life members for the use of their cars whenever he arrived at their temples. Prabhupada felt that this created a bad image for the society. There is a complication to keep it in India, though, because import tariffs are 2 to 3 times the value of the car. Pushta Krishna Maharaj has obtained a 6-month carnet, after which the car must be taken out of the country. He hopes to make an arrangement to send it to Nepal, renew the carnet, and then bring it back in. Once back inside the temple compound's front gate, Prabhupada got out of the car and decided to walk towards the prasadam hall. At the end of the line of the boundary wall, opposite the southern gate, he stopped to inspect the circular-shaped toilet block. It is meant to provide basic amenities for the families occupying the rooms on the front wall. He was repulsed by what he saw. Human feces lay strewn on the outer pathway. Poking several of the doors open with his cane, he saw that each and every toilet was completely blocked with stool and overflowing. Srila Prabhupada was shocked. He could not believe it possible that the maintenance of the block was so neglected. He demanded to know who was responsible. One devotee explained that the newer Bengali devotees are simple village people, unaccustomed to using flushing toilets. He said that Western devotees never used this block. Prabhupada rejected this excuse. He was disgusted. I could understand if they, the villagers, do not react to this because they are used to passing stool in the fields, but you Westerners, you are not trained in such a way. How our Western men can allow this situation without doing anything about it? He called the managers and told them to immediately have the toilets fixed and cleaned. After entering the temple, greeting the deities, and receiving Guru Puja, he gave Srimad Bhagavatam class. The verse expressed Prahlad Maharaj's feelings of humility as he described himself as born in a family infected with the hellish qualities of passion and ignorance. It was a wonder to Prahlad that Lord Nrsimha had touched him personally on his head, even though such a favor had never been extended to great personalities like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Lakshmi, the Lord's eternal consort. The toilet incident was obviously still on Prabhupada's mind. He often draws upon real-life incidents and presents them in a more refined philosophical way in class. But today, without any delay, he directly complained about what he had seen. He spelled out the serious implications very clearly. Prabhupada took full advantage of the description in this verse to express his disapproval of our inaction in the face of a gross display of ignorance. This is the position, Prahlad Maharaj humbly submitting because he is Vaishnava. That what is my position? My position is that I am born of Rajas Tamaguna. This birth takes place according to quality we acquire. Just like I was rebuking that toilet, this is so nasty, tamaguna. And if I have no response to such tamaguna place, that means I am also of that quality. Just like between fire and fire, there is no reaction, but fire and water, there is reaction. Similarly, sattvaguna and sattvaguna, there is no reaction. Tamaguna, there is no reaction. In English, it is called incompatible. When different qualities mix, acid and acid you mix, there is no reaction. But acid and alkaline, if you mix, there will be effervescence immediately. So it's amazing how Srila Prabhupada knew exactly where to go within that whole temple compound to see what was going on and to see the place that was neglected and to rectify that. He knew exactly where to go and how to correct his disciples. And Srila Prabhupada is very disappointed and he's very disgusted to find this neglect happening, because however we keep our spaces is a reflection of what's going on in our consciousness. And if we were to see a tamasic space, we would react to it and we would want to fix it. You know, a brahmana, if he's in a space that's not clean, naturally he will want to clean it because he has that quality of cleanliness. So when Srila Prabhupada saw the state of this toilet, he was disgusted and he ordered that it be cleaned and fixed immediately. Whereas he's pointing out that his disciples who knew what was going on there, they made no adjustments, they made no attempt to fix it at all, and he's saying that that's a reflection of ignorance, it's a display of ignorance. And Giriraj Maharaj explains that Srila Prabhupada said that before we become conscious, before we become Krishna conscious, we have to become conscious. So we have to be careful how we utilize our words, how we utilize our actions, and we have to be careful about the details of our lives, because love can be found in the details of how we order things in our lives, including spaces. But in each and every activity we do, and in each and every thing that we say, and everything that we maintain in our lives, it's a reflection of our consciousness. And we can even see that if someone has a close relative who they really care for and they want to give them a nice gift for their birthday, for example, they make sure that the details of the gift are so nice and pleasing, and it's an offering to that loved one. And similarly, each detail of our lives should be like that. It's an offering to the Lord. We should be careful to make sure that it is nicely done. That includes maintaining our spaces that we are responsible for, and the devotees were responsible for maintaining that space, even though they didn't even use that space. It was their responsibility. But this kind of neglect comes from neglecting the basics of sadhana, like japa. When we are inattentive in our japa, we tend to make mistakes in other arenas of our lives. If we're neglectful with our japa, we'll be neglectful in our service. But if we're attentive in our japa, we'll be attentive to those minute details which comprise our service arenas, and we'll make sure we do them properly as an offering to the Lord. Even if it is maintaining a toilet, if that's our service, we do it nicely for the pleasure of the Lord. And also how we keep a space, it really impacts the consciousness. So even though they may not personally have encountered that space, just it being there, and it would have impacted the purity of the whole space, and that would have impacted consciousness. And actually, Srila Prabhupada writes in a purport in the first canto of Bhagavatam how sattvic spaces are actually necessary for developing the finer tissues of the brain cells in order to make spiritual advancement. So he discusses how Dwarka used to be, and he just explains that how beautiful it was. It was surrounded by parks and reservoirs of water, with lotuses, and there were many trees with fruits and flowers. And he explains that this kind of space is actually necessary for the development of those finer brain tissues in order to make advancement. So our space is a reflection of our consciousness, but if we keep our space clear and clean, then also that will impact the consciousness. Okay. And then Srila Prabhupada compares how they didn't react to how fire and fire, if they are together, there's no reaction. But if fire and water are together, then there is some reaction. And then he also explains how acid and alkaline, if you mix them, there will be a reaction. So if it's not compatible, there will be a reaction. If someone sattvic walks into a tamasic space, there will be a reaction. But if a tamasic person walks into a tamasic space, there will be no reaction. It's what they're used to. And then Srila Prabhupada elaborates. He says, so if one is developing tamaguna, then if he becomes a pig next life, there is no reaction. He'll be very glad that I am pig, I am dog. There is no reaction. But if one is sattva guna, then he cannot tolerate, immediately obnoxious. Oh, such a nasty condition. So I'm very sorry there was no reaction in such a nasty toilet room, and you are getting sacred thread, the quality of Brahmana, sattva guna. It is very regrettable. Nobody reacted. This is the position that unless we curb down these rajaguna, tamaguna, there is no improvement. If a person in Krishna consciousness is found to have no reaction in rajaguna, tamaguna, then he is a dull stone. It is not improving. It is simply show bottle. So show bottle will not help. And actually, if a brahmana is in a space that is dirty, if he doesn't clean that space, then he loses his standard of being a brahmana. He's not actually a brahmana anymore, because either the dirt will stay or the brahmana will stay, but both cannot stay in the same place. So either the brahmana will leave or the dirt will leave. Otherwise, he is no longer a brahmana. This prescription is there. If one develops Krishna consciousness, then it is to be understood that he has surpassed sattva guna, the Brahminical qualification. So there is the quality of the mode of goodness, which is like a springboard into Shuddha Sattva, and Shuddha Sattva is pure goodness. It's transcendental to the three modes of material nature. But Prabhupada is pointing out that these devotees who are meant to be brahmanas, who are meant to be at least on the platform of sattva guna, are not responding to the rajasic space, which means that they have some tamasic tendency, mode of ignorance tendencies. Why we offer sacred thread to a person who is coming from very, very low family? Because it is to be understood by chanting Hare Krishna mantra, by following the regulative principle, he has already come to the platform of sattva guna. But if it is a false thing, then there is no need of second initiation. Our process is, don't do this, do this. Chant Hare Krishna mantra 16 rounds, and don't do this. No illicit sex, no meat eating. That means he's becoming purified from the rotten condition of Rajaguna and Tamaguna. But if he does not, then there should be no second initiation. This should be the rule. Prabhupada's criticism had its effect. By mid-morning, the whole block was thoroughly cleansed and disinfected. The managers vowed to keep it that way. So Srila Prabhupada's criticism was actually for their own benefit here. And, well, always. The spiritual master always criticizes for the benefit of the disciple. And it's amazing how powerful Srila Prabhupada is that his disciples, they took a vow to keep the toilets clean. They actually vowed that. And a vow is something very serious. So they took his chastisement to heart. The work on the new building is going on enthusiastically, even though it is clear it will not be habitable for the festival. The several hundred hired workers usually arrive around 7 a.m. Within a half hour, everything is in full swing. Sometimes a great clamor and loud shouts can be heard from them as they respond to the urging of devotee supervisors to work faster and harder. Even though they are being pushed, they are in good spirits, full of smiles. They often chant Hare Krishna and Jai due to their association with the devotees. Some of our Western men are also helping with the construction. They balance mortar, bricks, and mud in the wok-shaped karai on their heads, much to the delight of the laborers. The new cement mixer is a boon, but its loud clatter has been creating a distracting background racket during Prabhupada's morning Srimad Bhagavatam discourse, so now it is shut down while he speaks. During his massage, which he took downstairs, on his veranda, Prabhupada glanced across the fields towards the Goshala. So our Siddha Swarup and Sudama Vipra like to stay at the banana plantation? He asked. So Siddha Swarup, he was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and before he received initiation, he actually had a following of his own in Hawaii. He was a spiritual master to some disciples, and then when he surrendered to Srila Prabhupada, he gave his life to Prabhupada, and he encouraged his disciples to also surrender to Srila Prabhupada. Or it appeared that he gave his life to Srila Prabhupada, that he surrendered. And he had a friend named Sudama Vipra, and Sudama Vipra, he had a reputation of being a very violent devotee, and he actually attacked some of Srila Prabhupada's disciples and threatened war against them. So these two, they were staying at the banana plantation in Mayapur near the main compound. Shri Shri Radharanath ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. But after initiation, at some point, Siddha Swarup had left the shelter of Srila Prabhupada and began to criticize the movement. So now Hari Sori is saying that I took his inquiry as a prompt to ask some questions of my own. I wanted to hear Prabhupada's response to some specific points of contention between Siddha Swarup's followers and our ISKCON devotees. Srila Prabhupada, when Siddha Swarup first surrendered, Prabhupada cut me off. He never surrendered. Then he chuckled. Seeing my surprised look, he explained that they had come and made some offering of men and assets. Therefore he was trying to engage them in devotional service. I asked whether our devotees should read Siddha Swarup's books, because ISKCON devotees have been told that they are not bona fide. Prabhupada laughed and replied good-humouredly, "We don't take notice of what they say, we just take their money." So it's important for us to note here that when Srila Prabhupada is saying that he's just taking the money of these devotees, they're not actually favorable, but they're offering some assets to ISKCON and he's accepting them. But we have to understand that Prabhupada is doing this for the benefit of ISKCON. He's doing this on behalf of Krishna. He's not doing it for himself. Actually, everything he did was for Krishna. Yeah, Giriraj Maharaj tells how Prabhupada, he said that, after he suffered so much trying to establish ISKCON in the West, he said that, "I do not wish even to tell you how much I suffered, but I never complained. My principle was always everything for Krishna, nothing for me. And because that was my principle, I had no complaint." So even here, in dealing with money and in dealing with the assets that people who are a little unfavorable are offering, he's accepting it for Krishna. He's accepting it for the institution. So when he says, we just take their money, he means that he's doing it for the movement. Although between his disciples there seemed to be major differences preventing cooperative action, Prabhupada smilingly gave his own perspective on the two camps. "Of course I have affection for them. I don't send them away, and they are coming to see me, just like there may be so many animals. Some are a little fiercer than others." He also pointed out that they are coming to us, not us to them. So even though they were a little unfavorable, still they had some attraction to coming to Prabhupada. They had some attraction for offering what they had to Prabhupada. Prabhupada always refers to ISKCON as us. He said that there are differences, just as there are between him and his own godbrothers, but that we share a common platform of chanting Hare Krishna and taking prasadam. So Srila Prabhupada, he was so merciful. He hardly ever rejected anyone. Even when some of his sannyasis left their ashram, which a sannyasi is definitely not supposed to do, some of them went and They were married, they had children. Then when they came back to Srila Prabhupada, what did Prabhupada say? He said, how is your wife? How are your children? He accepted them back. He didn't reject them. Lord Chaitanya, he rejected Chota Haridas. He glanced at a woman and Lord Chaitanya rejected him. But Prabhupada, even when his sannyasis left the movement for some time to be married, he never rejected them. And there was one disciple of Srila Prabhupada who fell away, and he wasn't following any principles. And when Srila Prabhupada saw him, he asked that this disciple who fell away cook for him. And his disciple said, but Prabhupada, he's not following any principles. He's not even vegetarian anymore. And Prabhupada said, it's okay, just let him cook. So he never rejected. He was so merciful. And here, where there is some difference between Siddha Swarup and himself, he never rejected him. He allowed him to come and associate with the devotees, and on the basis of chanting and honoring prasadam, he accepted them. He accepted them. He accepted all of us. And it's so sweet how Srila Prabhupada always refers to ISKCON as, he says us. Once he told one of his disciples that there is one place I cannot go, because we know how Srila Prabhupada traveled. He traveled to so many places in such a short time. And then he said that there is one place I cannot go. And the disciple said, where, Prabhupada? You have traveled everywhere. And Prabhupada said, to the future. You cannot go to the future. And many times he expressed so much gratitude to his disciples, to his followers, for continuing the movement on his behalf. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he was leaving this world, he said that he's leaving his work unfinished. But my Guru Maharaj explains that he could have finished. Any pure devotee could have finished. Prabhupada could have finished. But he is allowing us to be a part of his movement. He's allowing us to do service. That's why he refers to the movement as it's a team effort. All of us are included in his movement. I just think that's very sweet. I mentioned that in New Zealand our men discouraged Siddha Swarup's people from visiting the temple, but Prabhupada said, why? They can come. Our centers are only for this purpose, to chant Hare Krishna and take prasadam. Gradually, they will come to sense. Srila Prabhupada sent Shatadanya with a message to his godbrother, Sridhar Swami, inviting him to come see him here in Mayapur. He offered to send his car. During the evening, as the temple room reverberated with the thunderous Sundara Arati Kirtan, Achyutananda Swami, Pushta Krishna Swami, and I had a debate on the balcony about whether everything in the material creation is actually spirit or not. I really loved reading this part. Achyutananda Swami, a witty, brilliant speaker, argued that everything is not spirit, at least not in the sense that spiritual means everything is conscious. Thinking that everything made of matter is conscious, he said, could lead to madness. You might walk around on tiptoes, not wishing to hurt the floor, or you might hesitate to close the door, not wishing to hurt the door. In this way, Maharaj spoke quite convincingly that matter is not spirit. Later, I went in to see Srila Prabhupada to get a proper understanding. When I put the question to him, he immediately cited Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 20. He had me read it aloud. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is himself this cosmos, and still he is aloof from it. From him only has this cosmic manifestation emanated. In him it rests, and unto him it enters after annihilation. Your good self knows all about this. I have given only a synopsis. Then he explained that everything is spirit, and thus everything is conscious. The material energy is conscious, but undeveloped. It can develop consciousness by Krishna's will. Prasadam is matter but changes into spirit, and it is therefore conscious. He gave me an example he used a few days ago, how the body produces skin and nails. One is sensitive and the other insensitive. Cut one and you feel pain, cut the other and you feel nothing. Yet the body as a whole is conscious. The entire universe is Lord Krishna's body and thus is conscious. Jivas, the individual souls, are very minute consciousness, but there is also mass consciousness. If you touch a stone, it is conscious, yet unconscious or undeveloped. The term matter simply indicates the state of one of Lord Krishna's eternal spiritual potencies. So matter is actually one of Krishna's spiritual potencies. Even the table and the floor and the chair, it is a part of Krishna's spiritual potency, and it is conscious, but it is undeveloped. But by Krishna's will, it can become developed. And in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan, every seemingly inanimate item has developed Krishna consciousness. So there's the milk in the pot, that's a devotee, and there's the pot itself, there's the floor, there's the door, there's the wall. Everything is Krishna conscious in the spiritual world. Here, in the material world, although matter is a part of the spiritual potency of the Lord, the consciousness of the matter is undeveloped. It's undeveloped. But for the Jiva soul, it's a little bit more developed, but it's dormant. The Krishna consciousness is dormant. That consciousness in living entity is more developed than material items, which are seemingly inanimate by Krishna's will. I left his room happy in mind and satisfied in heart. This is one of the advantages of being with him personally. All doubts can be immediately resolved. As disciples, we may read Srila Prabhupada's books, yet still end up speculating. But a few direct words from his divine grace, and everything becomes clear. He always refers to a scriptural verse and then asked a question and has the purport read out. It invariably explains the point perfectly. Srila Prabhupada is intimately familiar with everything in each of his books, and his deep realizations enable him to answer every question to one's complete satisfaction. And now we are in March the 5th, 1976. Prabhupada is a reservoir of information on all topics. He has quotes and meaningful comments to make on all varieties of topics. And with just a few words, he can enlighten his eager listeners on any subject. He has a clear vision of what constitutes the best qualities and attributes required by man for peaceful and successful human life. His observations on culture and education are especially penetrating. He likes to quote the great sage Chanakya, whose writings offer penetrating observations on the psychology of human living. So, Srila Prabhupada had information on all topics, and one of his disciples explains that once Srila Prabhupada was speaking to a mechanic, and Prabhupada was using these very technical words about the car, which the disciple didn't know, and he was wondering, how does Prabhupada know about the car? And the mechanic himself was also a little surprised. Here's this Swami in his saffron speaking about the technical components of a car. How is that? So Srila Prabhupada actually encourages us. He said that we should know something of everything and everything about something. He said this is intelligence, this is wanted. He said this in 1976, April 17th. We have to know something of everything. So we should know a little bit of something about everything. And in this way, we will be able to preach in a way that is very relevant. We will be able to connect with people who deal with multiple different kinds of career fields, or who have different interests in life. And we should know everything of something. There should be a particular field where we are experts. So we know a little bit of something about everything, but there should be a field which we know everything about. That's what he wanted. This is intelligence, he said. And Prabhupada could do that. He did that. And now we're reading about the philosophy of Chanakya, the psychology of human living. During his walk, he told us how, according to Chanakya, true beauty can be understood. Man with education is compared with the kokila. The bird kokila is very black, but his sound, sweet, so sweet, everyone likes. Kokila nam svaro rupam vijja rupam kurupanam nari rupam pativrata. A woman's beauty is how she is chaste and devoted to the husband. That is beauty, not personal beauty. Education is the beauty for the brain. And those who are saintly person, they should be simply forgiving. That is their beauty. So Chanakya speaks about what true beauty is. And he explains how for the brain, education is beauty. That's what makes the brain beautiful, it's education. And for a woman, what makes her beautiful is the chastity she has towards the husband. And chastity is actually also linked to shyness, and Srila Prabhupada speaks about this quality of shyness in a purport in the first canto of Bhagavatam. It's chapter 10, text 16. He speaks about how shyness is a particular extra-natural beauty of the fair sex, and it commands respect from the opposite sex. And he explains that shyness is a gift of nature to the fair sex, and it enhances their beauty and prestige. I was thinking about how the ladies in Dwarka were examples of that, how when Krishna was coming, they would be on the rooftop separated from the mass of people, and they would be throwing their flower petals and observing from a distance and maintaining their shyness and their chastity. So that is actually what makes a woman beautiful. And Prabhupada also encountered a sweeper lady who he speaks about this in the purport as well. He says that a sweeper woman commanded the respect of many respectable gentlemen just by manifesting a lady's shyness. So he's just making a point that even if she's a sweeper lady, she will command respect if she maintains her chastity. Whereas if half-naked ladies in the street do not command any respect, so that beauty, real beauty, they don't actually have. So for a woman, that is what makes them beautiful. And then he explains how for a saintly person, being forgiving, that is their beauty, that quality of forgiveness. And that forgiving nature can actually only come from humility. And it's only with humility that a person can chant all the time. Trinata pisunichina sarori vasahishna manina manadina kirtaniya hasada hari. If someone has humility, they can constantly chant, and with the chanting, all of these good qualities come, and this forgiving nature will also come. And that forgiving nature is what makes a saintly person beautiful. Those simple points, when understood in the greater context of Srila Prabhupada's mission, each small aspect fits like a clear note into the harmonic melody of Krishna conscious life. And Prabhupada is the expert conductor in knowledge of all the available elements, masterfully blending them together to produce a beautiful symphony on a universal scale. Every moment with him is an opportunity to learn and to advance another step towards Lord Sri Krishna, the ultimate goal of life. In class, Prabhupada described the relationship of the living being with Krishna as responsive cooperation. People sometimes ask, if God does not discriminate, then why are there rich and poor people in the world? The answer is that because of this responsive cooperation, however much we surrender to Krishna, that much he returns to us. So we know that verse, Yayate mam prapadyante tam sthiteva bhajami aham. Krishna will reward us according to how much we are surrendering to him. He will reciprocate with us. And then Srila Prabhupada explains how there are many men who, after making lakhs and crores of rupees, they retire to Vrindavan and they leave all their money to their wives and families, requesting them to send 200 rupees a month for serving God. But this is not a good policy, he said. If we give 200 to God, then Krishna will give us 200 in return. He does not discriminate. Rather, we discriminate and Krishna reciprocates. So perhaps they could have given more, but they're only giving 200 rupees a month for Krishna's service. So Krishna will be less inclined to, or he will reciprocate with them according to how much they are wanting to serve. And then Prabhupada offers himself as an example. He says, just see practically, our Krishna consciousness movement was started with 40 rupees. Now that 40 rupees added with Krishna, it has become 40 crores. You see practically, when I started for your country, I came to Mayapur. I offered my obeisances to my spiritual master. Then I went. At that time, I had no money even to purchase the ticket. And after that, I have come with 40 crores. This is the secret. Yate mam prapadyante. If you fully surrender to Krishna, then Krishna is there. So even though Prabhupada didn't have 200 rupees, he had even less, almost nothing. He gave everything he had to Prabhupada. He gave himself to Prabhupada, Prabhupada gave himself to Krishna, and in doing so, Krishna fully reciprocated with him, and he made this movement successful. So in giving everything, Krishna gives everything back. Everything. Bhavananda Goswami returned today from the boat program, enthusiastic and full of wonderful stories about the response they have been receiving. Prabhupada relished hearing about the daily programs in the villages and big receptions they got wherever they went. Bhavananda described how they simply dock the boat, perform kirtan, and then walk in procession with Shri Gaura Nitai. The villagers become very eager to have the party visit their homes. The devotees make it a point to sell everyone a Gita Gana, which they daily distribute by the hundreds. Prabhupada was excited at the news of the book sales. He made it clear that this was the success of the party. He praised Bhavananda that he had begun book distribution in India and now wants 100,000 Gita Ganas printed immediately. Srila Prabhupada is always very pleased when we're distributing his books. And there was one incident where Peter Prabhu was asking Srila Prabhupada that if we die on Sankirtan, would we go back to Godhead? So these devotees, they're distributing so many books, and if they die while they're doing that, would they go back to Godhead? And Prabhupada said, whatever state the mind is in at the time of death, that state you will attain. If you think of Krishna and you die on Sankirtan, you go back to Godhead. If you don't think of him, then maybe not. And then everyone in the room sighed when they heard that. Probably they were thinking, we're not going to make it. I'm distributing books, and I know it pleases Prabhupada, but can I think of Krishna at that moment of death? Probably not. And then it says here that they didn't get what they wanted to hear. So Prabhupada said something wonderful. He said, I promise you this. If you distribute my books until your dying day, Lord Chaitanya will personally come and take you back home, back to Godhead. And then when the devotees heard that, they said, they were relieved. Atreya Rishidas, the GBC for the Middle East, arrived from Iran. He came up to see Prabhupada just as he began his lunch. Rather than ask him to come back later, Prabhupada had me set a plate for Atreya by his side. He personally filled Atreya Rishi's plate with prasadam from his own plate. As he heard about his efforts to preach in Iran, he was very happy with Atreya and promised him all the men he needs to get things going in the Middle East. So, at the time this devotee was in the Middle East, it was actually a time of political upheaval in the Middle East. There was war, there was revolution, so it was a bit of a risk to go to such a place to preach, but still this devotee was doing that. And this part that we're reading is also an example of what we were reading earlier, how when we surrender and we offer our lives to Krishna, then he reciprocates. So we're seeing how Prabhupada on behalf of the Lord is reciprocating very personally with his disciple who has risked so much to preach, who has offered his life to preaching on behalf of Srila Prabhupada. So he's personally offering his disciple prasadam. He is serving his disciple. And that reminds me of how Krishna serves his devotee. That very sweet reciprocation is there. In the evening, on the big lawn adjacent to the guest house, dozens of local villagers came and put on a whirling, exuberant display of flame-throwing and stick-fighting, especially for Prabhupada's pleasure, while some danced around in a huge circle, twirling their hard bamboo lathis over their heads, behind their backs and between their legs. Others put on mock fights, clashing and banging their sticks together. Still others blew huge clouds of flames high into the air and lit up the night sky. Prabhupada came out onto the balcony and watched it all for 15 minutes, enjoying it very much. Afterward, all the villagers were fed sumptuous prasadam. So just in summary of some of the points we went through, we're talking about how we keep our spaces is a reflection of our consciousness. But if we keep our spaces in a sattvic way, then that will also affect our consciousness. And then we were reading about how merciful Srila Prabhupada is, that he never rejected anyone, even if they became opposed to his movement. He was always willing to allow people to come and associate with the devotees. He never rejected anyone. And then we were reading about how the material nature is actually a part of the spiritual potency of the Lord, and how everything is actually conscious, but some items are more undeveloped, like the table. And then we were reading about true beauty and the aspects of true beauty as it relates to the brain, woman, and also the saintly person, and what is true beauty for these different people. And then we were reading about responsive cooperation and how Krishna reciprocates with our surrender to him, that if we risk everything to please our spiritual masters, if we really give our hearts and try to serve and please him, we give everything, then in return we actually receive everything. Srila Prabhupada ki! Are there any questions or comments or corrections? All right. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki! Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki! Gaur Premanande!